Why America is afraid of India? What is the reason? Let me tell you something right now. When you hear that question, most people immediately think about military power, about nuclear bombs, about who's got the biggest army, who's got the strongest fighter jets. And sure, that's a part of it. But if you stop at that, you miss the whole truth. America isn't afraid of India because of just weapons. America is afraid of India because India is rewriting the rules of the entire global game and no one knows how to stop it. See, fear doesn't come from something you can control. Fear comes when you realize you can't control the other person anymore. For decades, America ran the show. They called the shots. If they said jump, countries had to ask how high. If they threatened sanctions, economies crumbled. If they waved the dollar, nations lined up to obey. That was the system. But then came India, quietly, consistently building something bigger than anyone realized, while the world was busy laughing at poverty, mocking the chaos, pointing fingers at corruption. India was silently stacking bricks, laying down steel, training scientists, raising thinkers and building industries. And now here, we are in 2025. And suddenly, America looks around and says, hold on. When did this country become unstoppable? It's not overnight. It's not a miracle. It's discipline. It's resilience. It's that grit that says we don't quit. That's what scares America, because India doesn't fold when it's pressured. India doesn't collapse when it's cornered. America saw what happened when they tried to push tariff, tried to dictate policy, tried to pull India into their wars. India said no. And not just no politely. India said it with strength, with confidence, with the power of 1 billion voices behind it. Now think about it. America has always been comfortable leading. But what happens when someone else is not only catching up but doing it their own way? That's India. And let me break down the real reason. NS. Why America is afraid? First, technology. 20 years ago, if you wanted to build a supercomputer, launch a space mission, or design a world-class missile, you had to look to America, Europe, maybe Russia. Today, India is doing it cheaper, faster, and in some cases better. When Chandrayaan landed on the moon's south pole, while America hadn't, it wasn't just a space achievement. It was a message. We've arrived. And when India builds its own 5G, its own chips, its own AI, its own digital payment systems, it's saying we're not begging for scraps anymore. That's what scares them. Second, the economy. Let me tell you, numbers don't lie. America can't ignore that India is on track to be the third largest economy in the world. And it's not just about GDP. It's about the scale. 1.5 billion people moving upward, buying, building, consuming, innovating. That's a market America can't control. For decades, American companies looked at countries as customers they could dominate. But India flipped the script. India said, come invest here. But on our terms. You want our market, you play by our rules. That's a level of self-respect many nations couldn't afford. And now America sees its stormy. None slipping. Third, military strength. Now let's be real. America still has the biggest defense budget. No denying that. But military power isn't just about how much money you throw at it. It's about strategy. It's about resilience. It's about self-reliance. India has missiles that can strike anywhere, submarines that can vanish in the ocean, satellites that can guide precision weapons. But more, than that, India has the will to use them if necessary. America thought India would always remain cautious, always stay neutral. But India proved in places like Balakot and Gaur that it will defend itself aggressively when the line is crossed. That rattles America, because suddenly India is not the soft power they thought. It's a power with both brains and brawn for alliances. See, America has always thrived on dividing people, making one nation depend on them while turning another into the enemy. But India is breaking that. India trades with Russia even when America says don't. India partners with the Middle East when America wants control. India strengthens ties with Africa when America ignores them. India builds relationships with Southeast Asia, Japan, even Europe without being a puppet. And here's the kicker. America needs India too. They can't push too hard because they need India to balance China. That dependency flips the power dynamics, and that's what frightens them the most. Now, let's talk about culture. You might not think culture scares anybody, but it does, because culture is influence. Culture is power. Hollywood used to dominate the world. American music used to set the tone. But now Bollywood, Indian food, Indian philosophy, Indian yoga, Indian spirituality, they're spreading like wildfire across the globe. People are curious, people are adopting, people are respecting, and with that comes soft power. Suddenly, America isn't the only storyteller of the world. India is writing its own story, and people are listening. But the biggest reason America is afraid, its identity. India represents something America can't copy. America was built on control, on forcing itself to the top, on dictating rules. India is built on resilience, on surviving centuries of invasion, on thriving despite oppression. That gives India a kind of strength America doesn't understand. It's a strength that says we've seen worse, we've survived worse, and nothing you throw at us will break us. That's not arrogance, that's history talking. That's blood, sweat, and generations of struggle talking. And when a nation carries that kind of weight, you can't intimidate it, you can't manipulate it, you can't own it. America looks at India and sees the future. A future where the dollar doesn't control trade, where Silicon Valley isn't the only tech hub, where Hollywood isn't only dream factory, where Washington isn't the only capital making global rules. And that future terrifies them because it means letting go of power they've held for a century. Let's get real here. Fear isn't always about destruction. Fear is about replacement. America fears being replaced at the top of the global hierarchy. And India is the only country big enough, bold enough, and resilient to make that happen. China might have the money, but it doesn't have the trust. Europe might have history, but it doesn't have the population. Russia might have weapons, but it doesn't have influence. India has it all. Youth, growth, technology, culture, democracy, resilience. That's why America is afraid. And here's the irony. America still calls India its partner, its ally. But deep down, this partnership is not equal. They know that in 10-20 years, the roles will reverse. They'll need India more than India needs them. And that shift, that reality is the reason for every tariff threat, every diplomatic pressure, every whisper campaign in the media. Because when fear sets in, you lash out. You try to delay the inevitable. You try to slow down the tide. But you can't stop the ocean from rising. And India, my friends, is that ocean. So why is America afraid of India? Because India represents what they can't control anymore. Because India is building a future where no single nation dominates, but where balance exists. And balance is dangerous for those who lived off imbalance. That's the truth. That's the reason. What truly frightens America is that India's rise is inevitable. It is no longer a question of if but when. You see, America has always lived with the comfort of believing that no matter who tried to grow, no matter which country talked about ambition, no matter how many nations dreamed of greatness, the United States would still stay at the top of the mountain. For a long time, that was true. They had the economy, they had the military, they had the culture, they had the influence. But today, when they look across the world and their eyes land on India, they don't see just another nation climbing. They see a nation that's climbing with such determination, such resilience, and such unstoppable energy that the outcome isn't in doubt anymore. America isn't asking if India will rise. They're asking how fast, how high, and how much their own power will shrink when it happens. Now, Let me tell you something real. Fear isn't born from weakness alone. Fear is born from inevitability. When something is guaranteed, when you know it's coming, whether you like it or not, that's when fear digs into your bones. America knows they can slow India down. They can throw tariffs. They can push restrictions. They can manipulate media narratives. But they know deep down that none of that will stop their rise. Because India isn't just running on government policy. It's running on people power, on history, on destiny. 1 billion plus people waking up every morning, building, innovating, hustling, and refusing to quit. That's not momentum you can bribe. That's not energy you can sanction. That's not ambition you can bomb. That's inevitable progress. Eddie, let's get this straight. America isn't scared of every nation's growth. They've seen countries rise before. They've seen Germany rebuild. They've seen Japan rebuild. They've seen China explode in size. But what makes India different is that it's doing all this while staying independent, while refusing to play by someone else's script. America could tolerate a rising Japan because Japan stayed US security umbrellas. They could tolerate a rising Germany because Europe stayed aligned with US policies. They even accepted a rising China at first because they thought they could make money off it. But India isn't offering America that comfort. India is rising on its own terms, not as a client state, not as a satellite, but as a full-blown power with its own vision. That's what true life frightens them. Think about it. America used to hold the monopoly on global innovation. Silicon Valley was the crown jewel. Wall Street was the money factory. The Pentagon was the ultimate power symbol. But now they're watching India build its own Silicon Valleys in Bengaluru and Hyderabad, watching Indian companies rise on Wall Street, watching Indian scientists land spacecraft on the moon FO, a fraction of the cost NASA spends. That doesn't just challenge America, it embarrasses them. Because if India can do with 1/10 the resources what America does with billions, what happens when India has equal resources? It's not a contest anymore. It's a takeover waiting to happen. And here's another truth America can't admit out loud. The fear is not just about India's economy or India's military or India's technology. The fear is about the timeline. Because America has always been able to comfort itself by saying, yes, they're growing, but it will take them centuries to catch up. That's no longer the case. India isn't crawling, it's sprinting. It's leaping decades ahead at once. In 25 years, India has gone from a developing nation stereotype to the 5th largest economy of space. Leader, a nuclear power, and a diplomatic heavyweight. That's one generation. What do you think the next generation will bring when 65% of the country is under 35 years old? That's not a climb, that's a launch. And America knows it. Now, let's talk about influence. America has always used influence as a weapon. Movies, music, media, money. That's how they controlled the narrative. They told the world who the heroes were, who the villains were, who the leaders were, and who the followers were. But now India is rewriting the story. Indian movies are breaking records worldwide. Indian culture, yoga, spirituality, food, fashion is everywhere. Indian voices are leading in tech, in science, in politics. Even inside America itself, the CEOs of the biggest American companies, Google, Microsoft, Adobe are Indian.